Hello, everybody. We're doing kind of a little bit of an impromptu show today. A couple of the people that usually run the show are either working or otherwise indisposed. So we're going to just talk about today, share a couple of our images. A few of the people that are on are currently under cloudy skies, so we're not really able to show you any live shots, but those people do have a few images that they can share and discuss. Um, and we still have a couple people working on getting their audio working. So we're just going to kind of go over some of the events that that we've imaged recently, and talk about them. And then if anybody comes up with any conversational topics as to anything in the news, we'll be more than happy to talk about those. If I do want to add that if anyone hasn't seen The Martian yet, it's a very good movie. Everyone should go see it. Stephen, you got anything you wanted to share today?
Yes. Believe it or not, last Saturday evening, I did get out for a short amount of time, as it started out as a fairly clear evening, and of course, once I got everything set up, the clouds began conspiring against me. So I didn't really get a lot of shooting in, but I did get about 3 or 4 sort of pretty good images. And let me pull one up real quick here. I'll do my little screen share here. And let's see. I don't know if I can see that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is, Daniel can tell us because he's seen in photographs this probably many times.
Yep, the double cluster.
Yes, this is the double cluster in Perseus. And I'm not sure if our southern astronomer friends, I'm not sure if this is one that they actually get to see or not. It's pretty far north here. And basically what we have here are two open clusters that appear rather close together in the sky. And I shot this with a 9¼ inch Schmidt-Cassegrain scope, but I also used a hyperstar with it. Now I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with a hyperstar, but basically a hyperstar is a special lens that you attach on the front of your Schmidt-Cassegrain scope, and it looks very odd to have the camera on the front of the telescope instead of at the rear. And basically what the lens does is it replaces the secondary mirror on the telescope. And the secondary mirror provides a 5 times magnification. So what you basically do is you take your scope, which was an f10 scope, and you basically make it into an f2 scope. And what that means is you can get an incredible amount of data in a very, very short amount of time. So what the exposure time on this image, if I were using a refractor or something like that, would probably be about a 4 or 5 minute exposure. But you're looking at a 1 minute exposure here of the double cluster. Only 1 minute of exposure time. And I think I shot around maybe ISO 400 or 500, something like that. And even with that short of an exposure, you can actually make out different color stars in there. You've got some sort of reddish-orange stars as well as the typical ones as well. So 1 minute exposure, and I took this in central Georgia, near Macon, Georgia, which is where I currently live. Not really a terribly dark sky site either. So this hyperstar being on the scope, I guess it takes it from an f10 ratio down to f2 and get you a lot of data in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, those are some pretty pinpoint stars there too. That's a pretty good image.
Yeah, probably took maybe 6 or 7 images because again time was sort of running short, and by far this is the best one that came out. There were some clouds in the area, so the other images were a little fuzzy, and it really wasn't even worth trying to do a stack of anything. So this is a single image here.
Cool. All right, thanks, Stephen. We'll come back to you here in a minute. I wanted to get over to Keith. Keith, we'll switch over to you. You got some live view going on right now, I understand it, from North Texas. Oh, there we go. Keith's audio is still down, so I'll try my best to describe what we're looking at. This looks like this is the Ring Nebula. I'm imagining, or actually, no, this is probably the, the Ring Nebula. Messier Object 57 in Lyra. So that's a really good image. Look at the color in that. And every now and then you can just kind of make out in the center there where the central star would be. You can just kind of make that out too. So that is a really good image. Looks like he's using Backyard EOS for this live capture. So obviously he's having some better skies than we are here in Georgia. Stephen and I are both located north of Atlanta. Keith's in Texas on the other side of the front that will hopefully be passing through here in a few days and give us some clear skies. But looks like he's getting some good images of M57 there. That's a planetary nebula. They're called planetary nebulas because that's what they kind of look like through a telescope, or at least when they were first discovered. That's what the telescopes of that time, they kind of looked bluish green like Uranus and Neptune do through the telescope, so they called them planetary nebulas. Kind of a little bit of a misnomer because they're really not planets or don't have any planets that we know of. Most of them probably blew their planets away a long time ago when they blew up. But this is the result of a central star entering the end of its life now. So when that star in the middle there decided to run out of fuel a couple times, it started shedding off some of its outer atmosphere, and each time it does that, the new shedding of its atmosphere kind of catches up with the old one and ionizes it, and it lights up all nice and pretty. So that's kind of what you're seeing right there. So probably about what our solar system will look like when our sun finally starts entering the last stages of its life. So you're kind of peering a little bit into our future while looking into the past. So that's kind of a cool way of thinking about it. I can't remember exactly how far away this object is, but it's relatively close, speaking. And it's located in the constellation Lyra, on the other end of that constellation from where Vega is, sorry. So that is a nice image. I can't wait to see what that looks like when you get it done and processed. It's moving around a bit there. And Stephen corrected me. He is no longer in northern Atlanta anymore. He's down by Macon, Georgia, but still generally in the area. So that is a nice image. We had Trevor on a second ago, I thought, with some views, but it looks like he's jumped out. So let me see here. All right, so I will take the time, or take the chance here to look at a couple of my images. We'll try this here. Let me know. Stephen, can you tell me if you're seeing my screen properly or not? See my flicker? No, it doesn't look like it. Oh, hang on, let me try this. Whoa, now we're freaking out. All right. Are you guys seeing that? I can't tell if I'm sharing properly or not.
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is I was playing with something the other day. As I said, that our conditions here in Georgia haven't been very good for about the last 2 weeks, really. But we did get a patch of clearness. It was a little bit cloudy, and it was near the moon was in this area. So what you're looking at now is M42, which pretty much everybody who does imaging has imaged, and everyone who does have a telescope probably has looked at some point. It's now starting to rise at somewhat of a reasonable hour here in Georgia. I mean, it gets up high enough for me to see maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. But I was playing with my equipment, so to give you guys as a little bit of an example of what we astrophotographers do when it's not ideal conditions, we like to play with our equipment, experiment, and even though the moon was in the area, I figured, hey, I'm going to put a different filter on my camera and see what I can get. So this is what I got. As you can see, since the moon was in the area, it was extremely hazy looking. There's also some dust motes that you can see on here from dust that was on my lens. I didn't take proper care to take the dust off my lens. But this is a reasonably good shot. This is just one 30-second exposure of M42. You can see a little bit of colors there. I kind of blew out the middle, trying to get some light, except for the moonlight. But what I think is of note here is this little strike that you can see down here towards the bottom. That's a satellite. And it's not just any satellite. This area of the sky is plagued by geosynchronous satellites that like to hover around the area. That is because M42 and Orion is really basically over the equator, where all the geosynchronous satellites like to hang out. And the way you can tell, or not tell, but the way I know this is a satellite is because typically when you're observing or when you're looking through a telescope, a satellite will just fly straight through your image. In this case, the satellite was stationary, and M42 was sliding past the satellite. So as my telescope was tracking this object, M42, the Orion Nebula, it created this streak. And the reason why I can tell is because I took several pictures after this. I took maybe for about 10 minutes. I took 30-second exposures, and I could tell just by the way that this satellite was moving through, or more correctly, how M42 was moving past the satellite, that it was a geosynchronous satellite. So had my scope not been tracking, I would have been able to see that there was a spot in my field of view as M42 moved past that spot. It would look like a star that was not moving. And if you're tracking, then you would see M42 moving, and you would see you would see M42 staying stationary, and you would see the satellite passing through your field of view. So it's kind of a cool little catch. So I wanted to just show it as an example of, this is some of the, we don't always get pretty pictures when we aim our scope up at the sky and try to take something. Sometimes when the moon's out, it's a good time to start testing your equipment and playing around with it. And every now and then you can catch something that you might not expect to catch that could be maybe of some interest to somebody else. So, all right, I'll switch it back over. Let's switch it back over to Steven and see if he has anything else to show us. Let me stop sharing here so I don't freak everybody out with there we go. And then Steven, let's see if we can switch over to you. Yeah, there we go. Oh, another cluster. All right, Steven,
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so this cluster is one that can be seen pretty much from anywhere on Earth, as it's a lot farther south than the one I was showing earlier. This is Messier 11, and does anyone know what the normal designation for this one is, as opposed to saying Messier 11? You might know offhand. It doesn't really look like it to me, but this is known as the wild duck cluster. Evidently, oops, sorry, still showing up?
No, we lost your sharing.
Sorry, let me get it back.
There we go.
Okay. Yep. Anyway, this is an open cluster, but it's one of the more tightly packed open clusters out there. In fact, as I was looking at this object through the scope before I put the hyperstar on, it almost kind of fooled me into thinking it was a globular cluster. It's such a densely packed cluster, but it's in the southern part of the sky for us northern dwellers. It's not too far from Altair, toward the Milky Way region, and what you have here is just a huge amount of stars. I'm not even sure how many stars. Actually, I just looked it up. About 3,000 stars roughly in this particular cluster. So it's Messier 11. It has an NGC number of 6705. I'm trying to think about how far away this particular object is. I want to say somewhere around maybe 4,500 or 5,000 light years away. So it's really one of those that you really can't see it with your naked eye because it's a really small object. But once you look at it through even a fairly decent pair of binoculars, you can make it out. And it's a really impressive cluster to observe with even a decent-sized telescope. So again, Messier 11, the wild duck cluster. Some open clusters you can really see, they're truly open. Like the double cluster is really pretty much a rather very open cluster, but this one is an open cluster that really is a little more compact with a lot more stars sort of in a smaller area there.
Yeah, I was just looking at it. Wikipedia says 62,000 light years, 6,200 light years.
Okay.
Yeah. So, pretty close.
So again, Messier didn't really know what he was looking at when he cataloged a lot of these objects in his I think it was 110 or so objects that he had, and he really probably didn't have any idea what this really was. But like I say, if you look at it through, like I know Daniel has an 8-inch SCT. I was looking at it through my 9 1/4, and it's an impressive thing to look at. It's one of the most impressive clusters you can really see, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's pretty tightly packed for an open cluster. So yeah, those are pretty. That's a pretty nice object. Got a little bit of color in it as well. It kind of stands out because the bright stars are kind of all compacted in the center, whereas other open clusters their bright stars are kind of scattered out more.
Right.
So, all right, let's see if we can switch back over to. Thanks, Stephen. Let's see if we can switch back over to Keith. It looks like he has the dumbbell nebula probably up. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's the dumbbell nebula, also known as Messier 27. That's also near the Ring Nebula and near the M11. It's kind of in the same area of the sky up there near the summer triangle of Vega, Deneb, and Altair. And this is another planetary nebula, as the Ring Nebula was, but this one's a lot closer to us. You can still just kind of make out a central star there. This one's got a weird, lots of weird color and lots of filament in there as well. It's got a lot of detail when you get zoomed in, and it's called the dumbbell nebula because obviously you can tell there it looks like a dumbbell. If you have a really, really dark sky and a really, really big scope, in a 10-inch or more area, you can actually start making out some detail over here, which you can just see in this image. And then it looks more like a football when you can see that instead of a dumbbell or an apple core. Some people have said it looks like an apple core as well. It actually probably looks more like an apple core than a dumbbell, but. And again, this is Keith Frost's image. I'm talking because his audio is not working, so I don't want anyone to think that it's my image. This is Keith's image from North Texas. Thanks for sharing that, Keith. There's a nice, I like the little crisscross you got on that bright star there in the lower right. It's kind of cool. All right, let's switch over to see some solar images now. Apparently the sun is always up somewhere.
Sure is. This is live, as you can see by the wobbleness. Hydrogen alpha sun.
Yeah, that is really, really cool.
Now, Paul, which area of the sun is causing all the aurora activity? Do you know?
I think lately it'll be the bright spot on your left there. Spot here has been fairly active lately. Active region 2443. It just let off a flare, this little flare before we started actually.
Now you said left, but to me that's on the right side of the image.
Yeah, okay. It's probably backwards to me.
Okay. I mean, I know you're in Australia and everything's upside down. I didn't realize that left and right was backwards too. Wow, that is nice.
It's a little bit noisy because of cloud interference, but there was a flare about an hour before we started.
So tell us a little bit about your equipment that you're using to capture this image.
There's my equipment.
Oh, there we go.
Currently using the middle scope, the Lunt 80 double stacked.
Nice.
The little black one, just a little 80mm refractor, has currently got this calcium K module on it, which is producing that sun.
Okay.
It shows the sunspots a lot better.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you can see those dark areas there. Cool. Looks like your tracking is doing pretty good. It's always weird with the sun because the sun always seems to kind of, because of the heat, bounce around in there a little bit more. Yeah, you had a question?
Paul, with the calcium K, that's not a specifically made calcium scope. Isn't it sort of a module that gets added to a scope? Is that correct?
Yeah, the calcium K module just... Actually, I'll just grab it. It's the easiest way to show it off. Oops, dropping things on the floor.
Yep.
This is a calcium K module. It just inserts in the back end of your scope like any other diagonal. The sun, without any filters on the front of the scope, hits this little silver part, gets filtered, and only the 393 nanometer wavelength comes out the end.
Cool.
Now, will that work with any scope, or does it have to be a hydrogen alpha scope, or what type scope do you need for that?
That'll work with any refractor up to about 100 millimeters without any extra filtering. over 100, you have to start out doing filtering, or it produces too much heat and melts it basically.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, obviously, it's safe for that type of scope. But is it safe for like an SCT to be pointed at the sun without anything on the front of it? If you had that thing in
Definitely
the back of
not.
it? Yeah, I didn't think so. I wanted to make that point for those out there with a compound telescope, because you'll probably end up catching something in your scope on fire or melting something.
Yes, explosion would probably be what would happen. Although I do know you can get hydrogen alpha
Yeah.
eyepieces for SCTs now. So I'll grab one of those too.
Yeah, but really, when you're looking at the sun, if you're using like an 8-inch scope or something like that, it's really kind of a waste of scope. I mean, you don't really need too much scope to really look at the sun as long as you have it properly filtered. Those bigger scopes are meant for catching light, and you don't have to catch that much light when you're looking at the sun.
This is the other option. There's a Daystar Quark, which could also be used on any refractor up to about 100 millimeters. That'll give you lovely hydrogen alpha views. I believe they now make one for an SCT, which you do require a little bit of filtering on the front end.
Right. Cool.
I think they're going for about $1,000 at the moment, so they're not that cheap.
So, Paul, you're pretty much completely a Lunt guy, is that correct?
Mainly, yes.
Because Lunt is sort of the premier maker of solar observing and astrophotography equipment. I have a much smaller Lunt. I have a little 50 millimeter. It's really only good for observation at this point, but it's nice when you want to go out and do like an outreach event at a school or something like that during the daytime. And of course, you can sometimes take another scope and use a white light filter, and your view will be somewhat similar to what you're showing on your camera. But it's also nice to show through the hydrogen alpha scope where they can see the little prominences on the sides of the sun as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that too, that the Lunt is the type of scope, or the manufacturer of that scope. You also have Coronado, which makes some decent solar scopes, but I think Lunt is kind of the premier solar scope maker right now. For those that might be on the meeting but not know what some of these terms are that we're throwing out there, I wanted to just clarify that a little bit. All right, let me try to share something again here, since we're bouncing all over the place. Let's go
show
from
this. This is just a little Lunt white light filter. This also goes in the back end of the refractor.
I think they're seeing my screen right now. I think I switched over to my screen. I beat you to it. You want to go ahead and take sharing back?
Yep. There we go. Right. To show this is the other option. This is a Lunt white light filter, which goes on the back of your scope too. All the heat from the scope ends up in this little red patch at the back, and about 0.1% actually comes up into your eyepiece. It's another way of doing it. Or you go the cheap way and just use a bit of solar film in the front of your refractor, or use CT for that matter.
Cool. Yeah, that's basically what you would need then to look at the sun safely. All right, you guys see my screen now?
Do.
All right, so this is an image I took of the moon way back when we could actually see the moon. These clouds that we've been having lately. So, but I did this a little differently. Normally, when I shoot the moon, I take a video, usually a 5-minute video or so, and take those images and stack them together to create an image like what you see on the left here. And then what's on the right was a single exposure taken with the same settings. I wanted to just kind of show people a little bit of the difference, so you can kind of see that the one on the right there isn't quite as clear. It doesn't have quite the detail. It's a little bit brighter, so you can kind of see that. I mean, you can still see the main formations, but actually, if you look on the bottom right-hand side of it, you can kind of see. If you look at the craters there, they're not as defined as the one on the right, the left-hand side. So I just thought it was kind of a cool comparison, because normally we post our, nice, crispest, best images that we can. And that's not always what they look like when you just take one single image. Although the one on the right is still a decent image, I think, for a single shot. There's a lot more detail and a lot more contrast on the one on the left.
Daniel, I see that you on the image on the left you mentioned auto stackered.
Yes.
Maybe explain a little to people what that was, what it is, and how much that costs.
Yeah. Well, it's a whopping $0. So most of the software that I use is free. I like to throw more of my money into my equipment than software. So, but yeah, when I take a video, I run it through two programs. The first one I run it through is PIP, Planetary Imaging. I can't remember what it stands for. Planetary Imaging Processing something. I don't know. It stands for something, but it's called PIP, P-I-P-P. And basically what that does is that goes through every frame of your video and centers the object in the view and creates a new video with every frame centered properly. And that's to take into effect any tracking issues or any drift if you didn't do a perfect alignment. And then I run it through Auto Stacker. And what Auto Stacker does is it examines every frame. It does a little bit of alignment as well, but it examines every frame and it looks for contrast changes, sharpness changes in each individual frame and uses the sharpest parts of every frame. So in doing so, what it does is it gets rid of camera noise or atmospheric distortion or any other issues that might have affected the clarity of the image. So you get a better signal to noise ratio. Anytime you take a picture with a camera, especially at night, not so much in the daytime, but due to your camera settings and the temperature outside, any bit of interference or heat from the camera or from the surroundings can cause any number of distortions to the image. You can get hot pixels, pixels that light up even though no light's hitting them. You can get noise from the electrical components inside the camera. So using programs like PIP and Auto Stacker help eliminate that and help get more signal to noise ratio out of your images. Another cool thing about PIP is if you have a if you want to take images, especially of the moon, but the moon and the planets, and you don't have a scope that tracks, but you have the ability to hook a camera up to it, like say you have a big Dob that doesn't track. With PIP, you can tell your camera to take a video of the object drifting through your field of view. So you can put the camera in there, get the object in the top, like let's just say the top right corner of your image. Or of your field of view, start a video and just let the planet or moon drift through until it's gone, and then you can take that video and run it through PIP, and PIP will align them. Obviously, it'll just be better to use the ones in the middle of your image. You don't want to get the ones that are too close to the edges of your frame, but it will align them, and then you can use a program like Auto Stacker to get to stack them together and get a little bit clearer of an image. I actually haven't tried that yet, but I definitely would be interested if anyone does try it, because I think it could help some people who might not have a tracking scope still be able to do some decent images of Venus or Jupiter, Saturn, and the moon as well. So
that's great. I'm a big fan of Auto Stacker as well. I do know that some people also use a program called Registax,
yep.
which essentially is very similar to Auto Stacker.
That's free too.
With that, I think Paul might even use Registax if I remember correctly. But yeah, these are all free programs like PIP, Auto Stacker, Registax. Now for stacking deep sky objects, I was just going to mention that a lot of people use another free program called Deep Sky Stacker.
I do as well.
Sky objects, yeah, that's a very popular and free program as well. And I like your attitude of spending your money on your hardware. Equipment rather than so much money on software.
Yeah, and most of these applications work on Windows. There aren't very many yet that work on the Mac. The star trail images, when I'm doing star trails, I do use it on my Mac. It does have a Mac version, but Auto Stacker and PIP, I believe, are just Windows based right now. Whoa, I stopped sharing, but it still did that. Stop doing that. All right, let me see here if I can not. Why does it keep doing that? I'm not sharing anymore. Hey, Paul, can you switch it over to somebody else real fast so I can switch back over to my Hangout view and it not do that? There we go. All right, more solar from the only guy on the call that does have a view of something.
This is an up-close version of active region 2443, which probably doesn't have much more life left into it before it rotates around the edge and goes away for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, and Keith just said he uses ResiStax too, and it works with Wine on Linux. So those Linux users out there, you can use ResiStax. All right, let's switch over to Keith if we can. He looks like he's got another object, live view, maybe M31. Nope, nope, that's not M31. Oh, it is M31. Okay. I didn't see the satellite galaxies in there, so I wasn't sure if that was M31 or not. But that is a huge. Oh, there he is. Okay, he's just zoomed in a little too much. So there we go. There's one of the satellite galaxies over there to the right of that image. So he was really, really zoomed in on that. It's hard not to zoom in on this galaxy because this galaxy is extremely big. It's so close to us, relatively speaking. It's about 2.3 million light years away, which means that the images you're looking at are the photons from that galaxy that are hitting his camera right now and going through the internet to your screen is about 2.3 million years old. Been traveling through space all that time to get here. So this is a nice image. And this object, if it was really, really bright and you could go outside and look at it, it would be about 4 to 5 moon widths in length. That's how massive this galaxy is. Only the bright core is what most people get a good image of, and that's really what we're seeing here, is the bright core. He's got the full spectrum mod on his camera right now. That's why it looks a little pink. So he's probably trying to pull out whatever data he can and subtracting out some light pollution with some light pollution filters. So it has a tendency to make things pink, which can be easily corrected in post-processing. And this is the type of object that we would get multiple frames of and stack using Deep Sky Stacker just to get rid of camera noise and stuff and bring out a little more of the fainter detail. So it looks like he's shooting a 45-second exposure at ISO 800, and his camera at least thinks it's the sensor's around 26 degrees Celsius. It looks like, so it's a pretty decent temperature. It's got a little on the warm side, but yeah. So then this is using another. Well, this application isn't free. This is Backyard EOS. It's got a 30-day free trial on it though that you can try. But this works with Canon cameras. It's a way to control your camera and see what your camera is seeing with it hooked directly to your computer. So you can set you can tell through this application what settings to use on the camera and how long the camera can take a picture. You can even tell it to take 100 shots, over the course of a certain period of time. So it really gives you more granular control of your camera, and also kind of saves you some battery because you're using your camera as your computer as a screen and not the LCD on the camera itself. He says there's a free program called Darktable, but it doesn't like Google Hangouts. So it's kind of funny. I think you check that out. All right, I got your message there, Paul, so let me bring that up real fast. I'm going to go through some of the other images that some of our other people have shared on our Flickr group. So oh, you already did that. Here we go again. Okay. So here is a shot. I assume you guys can see that I'm going to mess up these names because I'm horrible at saying names, but Sharon Ahmad maybe? Sorry if I'm messing that up. Of Jupiter, the Moon, and Venus, and Mars, taken on the 8th of November. Wait a minute. Taken from the future. So I assume it's the 8th of November where he is. It's not yet there yet here. So yeah, you got the Moon, Venus, then Mars, and then Jupiter up at the top. That is a nice image. Even got some good earth shine there on the Moon coming through the clouds. Sometimes the clouds are your enemies, and sometimes they can make for a beautiful image. And here's a case where, even the clouds kind of added a little bit of a, effect to the images here. So that's kind of a cool shot.
Yeah, I believe Shah shoots in, I want to say Malaysia, I believe. And I believe he is very, almost right on the equator. So the
Yeah.
planets and the moon for him are directly overhead most of the time. Kind of
Wow.
interesting.
Yeah. That's a nice shot. Let's see what we have now. Oh, here's another one zoomed out more. Right, it looks like right as the sun's rising. Let me see. That one was taken at 6:30. The other one was taken at 6:32. Okay, so yeah, it actually looks like that cloud just moved just a little bit, but yeah, he's got some. That's a nice. Yeah, I like that. Okay, and then do we have any information on this picture? All right, Sarah and Simon Fisher posted this picture. It looks like you got the Pleiades down at the bottom here, and that looks like probably it's an ISS pass. Let's see what they say about it. No, they don't mention anything about the satellite or airplane flying through there, but they were just shooting the Pleiades, and this is what they got. So that is a nice little image. A lot of people, I'm amazed at star events and stuff, how many people think the Pleiades are the Big Dipper or the Little Dipper. But that is a very nice image. I'd like to get an image of it one day, but my big scope zooms in too much on it, even with my focal reducer on there. So those are really cool. I like the trees. How they had it's like something lighting up the trees. That's a really cool effect. And you actually got the Hades cluster coming up right here between the trees too, which is kind of like the face of Taurus the bull, and Aldebaran there at the very bottom. So we got two clusters in this one shot. Ah, the sun in white light on November 7th. This is by Sarah and Simon Fisher as well. At least some people are getting nice weather. And look at all those sunspots, and they've got them all labeled here as well. So, Paul, is this the one right here, AR 2449, that you were just showing us that you said was about to rotate out of the view?
No, that one's just rotating into view.
Okay, so you're over here.
2443. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you're over here then. Okay. Yeah, it's a cool, recent, decently active sun right now. It's better than looking up there and not seeing anything. Looks like we have another shot of the sun. This one's probably taken a. All right, yeah, this one was taken a little while ago by Dieter. It's back when it was way more active. Got some really good sunspots there. And sunspots, for if anyone isn't familiar, the sun is obviously very, very hot, and the sunspots are very, very hot too. But they're considerably cooler than the surrounding surface of the sun, so they show up as dark spots from our point of view. But they are still really hot. Cool is a relative term when you're talking about the sun, but they are kind of interesting to watch. And when they're on the surface of the sun, it's actually one way you can tell over a period of time or a few hours that the sun is actually rotating, because they will kind of move with the surface as the sun rotates. That's a really cool. I can't tell. Oh yeah, I thought that was one in the southern field, but that's something on my screen. Oh wow. Someone took a very nice shot and took a lot of time to label all the cool things in the center of the Milky Way. Yeah, Messier objects in Sagittarius. 1 hour and 10 minutes of total shots. That is a nice shot. That takes some zooming in. Wow, look at that detail. Look at those little pinpoints. And if anyone is interested in getting into astronomy relatively cheap, I would suggest, especially in the summertime, buying a decent pair of binoculars, maybe some 10 by 50s or a little bit larger if your arms can hold them up, and just look at the Milky Way. Look at the center of the Milky Way, and just move your scope or your binoculars around and just look at all the objects that you can see. There's a really cool image. So he's even marked the center of the Milky Way there. And you got the loon, and all these M numbers. These are these Messier objects we were talking about earlier. So you got M8, M20, M28, M22, the globular cluster. So that's actually a weird place for a globular cluster. They're usually not close to the center of the Milky Way like that. The reason why there's so many objects in this view is because we're really looking at the heart of the Milky Way. So we're looking at 100,000 light years of space between us and the center of the Milky Way, and there's a lot of objects that way. It's kind of like standing outside of a city and looking towards the city. You're going to see a lot more than if you look out towards the more urban areas. So there's a really cool, lots of cool dark lanes where there's dust. The whole area in this picture should look about as bright as it does down the bottom of the picture. Any spots that don't, it means that there's dust or something in between us and the center of the Milky Way that's actually blocking that light. That is a really impressive shot. I like that a lot. All right, what do we got here? Oh, Sagittarius nova. Wow. That is an interesting shot. That's really cool. Not everything we look at is big and gaseous. So yeah, this looks like that one star that went nova earlier in this year. Wendy Clark. That's a nice image, Wendy. Thanks for sharing. Oh, I got some lunar shots here. This must have been for a while ago. And this is the best part of the moon to look at for you lunar lunatics out there. This the terminator here, where the sunlight stops hitting the moon. You get some really long shadows. You can actually tell how deep and these craters are and how the rims into the dark area light up. You can kind of see over here how it's all on the right side. You can't really see too much detail, but as you get closer here, you can actually see some more of these details and some of these little rills and lines and stuff that go through some of the craters. And since everyone asks anytime they look at the moon, right about in the center of the screen, I guess right where my magnifying glass is, if you can see it, is where Apollo 11 landed. And no, you cannot see the flag. Even the best telescopes on the planet won't show you the flag. Can't zoom in that far. Oh boy, what do we have here? Here's another one from Wendy. Different images of that nova. That's really cool. Oh, all right. Here's a nice image of Jupiter. Let's see here. Zoom in there. Got some nice all the moons. Ganymede, Europa, Io, and way over here somewhere should be Callisto. Yeah, that's really nice. Another cool thing about looking at if you want to look through a telescope through a relatively short period of time and actually see stuff that moves, Jupiter is your best bet. Because not only do these moons change positions nightly, over the course of a couple hours or even an hour time, some days, some of these inner ones you'll see, move out or peek out from Jupiter or disappear in front of Jupiter in a relatively short amount of time. So Jupiter is always kind of cool to look at over the course of a couple hours. And it's one of those objects where when it's up and you're looking at something else, you can always kind of go back to it and maybe see that they've moved a little bit in relation to each other. Some nights you'll have 3 on one side and 1 on the other. Some nights you'll have all 4. Some nights you'll only see 2 as they move around. And just thinking about how big Jupiter is, 11, 12 Earths can fit from one side of it to the other, and these moons are just whipping around it that fast. It's amazing to think about. All right, let me go back over here real fast and see. Does anyone have anything else they want to share, or you want me to just continue going through these images?
I got one, Daniel.
All right, let's switch over to Stephen. I can come back to this if we need to. All right. All right, we can see it, Stephen. Go for it. Stephen, are you there? I don't think we're hearing you.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so what we're looking at here is there are 2 galaxies in this photo. And this photograph I did not use a telescope for. This photo I used a Canon 70D DSLR and a 135 millimeter lens. Now I did use a tracking mount, so that's why we're able to get some pretty good detail on the galaxies here. But right in the center, you can see there is a star there, and I forget the name of that particular star. But in the upper left corner, you'll be able to see the Andromeda Galaxy, which we were just looking at through Keith's view. Of course, he was zoomed in with a telescope on it. But that is the Andromeda Galaxy there. And then down in the bottom right corner, you can see another, it's a lot smaller, a little smudgy looking thing there. And that is Messier 33, known as the Triangulum Galaxy. And those two galaxies are in what's called the local group of galaxies. And of course, local is a relative term here. Like you said, the Andromeda Galaxy is about 2.3 million light years away. And the Triangulum Galaxy, I want to say, is somewhere around 3, maybe 3.5 million light years away. So they're quite far away. And the Andromeda Galaxy is one that, if you're in a dark sky site, you could actually sort of make it out as a smudge with your naked eye. The Triangulum Galaxy, however, is almost impossible to see with naked eye, but you can make it out with a pretty good telescope. So in that one shot, like I say, you'll see there, you've got the star in the center, and then the two galaxies at the opposite corners of the image. Again, this was with a 135 millimeter lens on a tracking mount. And I want to say this is about a 2-minute exposure, roughly.
That's cool. That's a really nice image. Thanks, Stephen. All right, let's shift over to Keith real fast. He's got another live view of, I think, M15. Let's see. I'm not seeing it, though. I'm seeing your screen, but I'm not seeing M15 in there. Oh, you're still looking for it. Okay. Let's come back to you in a second. Paul, you want to show your all-sky camera, it looks like. Oh, wow.
Sure is. The little visitor in the early hours of the morning. Assuming it's one of those, the Taurid meteor. It's coming from that general direction.
That is bright. Looks like it kind of got a little bit of a little outburst there as it, because it got a little brighter there at the end. That's really cool. That's a nice catch.
Is that one of the Magellan galaxies kind of below it there, Paul?
Yep, it will be.
Yep.
It should be the largest smudge will be the large magellanic cloud. I think the head of the meteor will just be passing the small one.
Yeah, it looks like there's a little fuzzy there. Yeah, that's one thing we do not get to see. And I also like that, I believe it looks like on the right-hand side of your screen, that's Orion.
Sure is.
Yeah, but it looks, from our point of view, it looks a little backwards. It's kind of cool to think about that. I need to get to the southern hemisphere someday, and that'd be a cool trip to go see some constellations I don't know.
I say we do a road trip down to New Zealand.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a bridge built at some point that'll get us there. The trick is how to get my scope and equipment there. I guess we'll just have to borrow Paul's. That's a cool shot, though. So do you have software here that lets you know that it caught something, or do you have to just go back and review it to see anything?
Yeah, I just watch the movie in the morning and see what we've caught.
Okay. Cool.
It's just using fire capture to record every 10 seconds.
Okay, you got lucky then there. You got one that bright. It's kind of interesting how it looks like it just comes straight out of the top of the middle of the image. Just kind of poof. Nice. Alrighty. Let's switch back over to Keith real fast and see if he's found something. It looks like he's still moving around. That is not a UFO. Do not attempt to adjust your sets. Alright, let's go back to your star trail shots there and give Keith a little more time to hunt for that globular cluster. Well, that's cool. So I guess we know which direction south is.
Yeah.
Looks like you got some Orion star trails and Sirius up there, coming out of the right towards the north.
Yep. There's no bright pole star down here.
Yep.
It's a little iridium flare, I think, right down the centre there.
That's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, Polaris helps. It definitely helps align your telescope. That's for sure. That is really cool. All right, let's switch back over to Keith and see if he's Yeah, it looks like he's still moving around. Alrighty. Alright, so let's give Keith just a few more seconds. Let's go back over to the Flickr page. Are you guys still seeing my screen, or what are you guys seeing?
See you.
Okay. See me? I don't want you looking at me. No one wants to see that.
I still see the star trails in the global one down there.
Alright, you guys seen the Jupiter image yet?
Yep.
Okay. Alright, here's an interesting one of the moon. That's interesting. The green color here. Lunar algae on this shot. That's a really cool shot, though. Somebody yell at me if Keith finds the finds M15. Just gonna kind of, oh, there's some nice lunar right there. Look at that little gash there. Look at the color in this. Oh, this is from Russ Bateman. The Sea of Showers. Let's see, does this tell us what he shot this with? Okay, yeah, so 127 millimeter SCT, next image 5 camera, stacked 200 or 300 frames. GIMP, he used GIMP for post-processing. This is the Photoshop-like software that's free as well. So you can try GIMP if you're looking for a free software to a little bit cheaper than Photoshop's price. More shots there. Let's see. What is this? David Simonetti, the Crab Nebula. Yeah, that's coming up at a reasonable time too. So that'd be shot something I'm looking forward to seeing. Oh, there's some zoomed in solar there. Paul's shot. Look at those filaments. Those are really detailed. That's a nice shot, Paul.
Yeah, this is done on the 80mm with a 2.5-inch power mate.
Daniel, I got one more if you got time for it.
Okay, yeah, sure. Let's switch back over to Steven. Oh, wait a minute. Let's go back to Keith, because Keith looks like he's finally found M15. Let me stop sharing mine. There we go. All right, so there we go. There's Keith with M15 again. This is a globular cluster. So these are, hundreds of thousands of stars, all gravitationally bound to each other. They form kind of out of the same stellar nebula and never really break away from each other. So they're just kind of hovering out there. This is right off the tip of Pegasus's nose, if anyone ever wants to look for it. And that is a nice image. It's kind of got some, it's not really structure, but it's definitely got a bright core with these little expanding arms that comes off of it. That's a really nice shot. Keith, I look forward to seeing some of these once you're done with them and process them up. It zoomed in a little bit there. Yeah, so there you can really see that bright core of stars. That is nice. Congratulations on finding it. All right, we're kind of getting close to the hour real fast. Let's switch over to Steven, and then we'll go over to, looks like Paul wants to show us some videos of a solar flare there.
Okay, so here is another star trail. Now this star trail is obviously in the northern hemisphere, And down toward the middle bottom there, you will see that in the center of what really looks like the sort of swirly area, there is a bright star. That is Polaris. So like Daniel said, it's very fortunate for us in the northern hemisphere to have a star that sits pretty much at the northern celestial pole. And what you're looking at here, this was a 10-minute exposure, a single 10-minute exposure. So what I did was I used, again, a DSLR, no telescope. And for this, I believe I used, I think it was a 24 millimeter setting on my lens. I have an 18 to 35 millimeter lens. I think I set it to 24 millimeter if I remember correctly. And just basically shot for 10 minutes. And you can see toward across the top there, sort of the fuzzy area, and that's the Milky Way. So that's what the Milky Way looks like with a star trail exposure of about 10 minutes there.
Cool. It's a nice shot, Stephen. You're coming in on my turf there.
Well, this is a single 10-minute exposure. Now, a lot of people prefer to do their star trails much more like Daniel does, where Daniel will shoot a series of, let's say, 20 or 30-second exposures, and then use the free star stacking program to stack them. This is just a sort of different way to do it. I just didn't have a lot of time for this one, so I just, while doing some other thing, just sort of put the camera on a tripod and pointed there for, let's say, 10 minutes while I was doing some other things.
Yeah, that's really cool. Some nice color there, too. Let's go over to Paul real fast and show his video he's got here, and then I think by that time we'll be ready to end the call.
It's just a quick little animation from the 1st of November.
Oh, yeah.
It's looking at about a 40-minute time period, imaging about every 30 seconds.
So you can see a little bit of an outburst there. Stuff does move in space. Look at that. Cool. Thanks for sharing. That's really cool. All right, it is 10 o'clock, at least in Georgia, in the U.S. So that reached the hour mark. So I think we're going to go ahead and close the call. Thanks everybody for viewing. Thanks for those who showed up and showed some of their views, and thanks for anybody who shared their view on Flickr on the Star Party group. Check us out on the Global Star Party on Google. Search for Global Star Party on Flickr for the images that you can upload if you want to share some of your own images on the next call. If you want to see any of the people that are on the call, pretty much everybody on the call here, Paul Stewart, Stephen Ron, Daniel Herron, myself, and Keith Frost are all on Google. So look us up on Google Plus, and you'll be able to find us there and chat with us if you have any questions on how we do what we do. We're more than happy to help answer your questions, and we're always happy to teach our next competition. So we're really into knowledge sharing. So contact us. Share any insights we have with you. We'll be more than happy to. Just look for us on Google and on Flickr. So thanks everybody for attending, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks everybody.